Australia doesn't have a jobs crisis per se. We're at near or full employment. The problem is finding workers. There are at least 500,000 job vacancies right now. Ahead of the Jobs Summit, a number of solutions have been flagged. Talk is fine, but action needs to follow pretty soon. Joining me live now is the Shadow Finance Minister Jane Hume, who's not going to be at that Jobs Summit, but we've seen the guest list. Interesting to see that the big four CEOs not going to the summit, but the super funds are. Can you see the logic there?
Well, to tell you the truth, I can't see the logic in the Jobs Summit at all, Laura. Let's face it, we know what the problems are. Labour shortages right around the country are preventing businesses from growing and from employing more people. You know, it is actually hampering productivity and growth now. And we know that the way to plug those labour shortages is twofold. Obviously, most importantly, that all Australians that want a job should be able to get a job. And that's why the Coalition proposed the doubling of the pension work bonus. We did that over 2 months ago. Now, if Labor were genuine about wanting to solve the jobs crisis, well, they would have adopted that policy 2 months ago when we proposed it. In fact, it's already been introduced as a private senator's bill into the parliament, and in fact, Labor could make it a priority in the next sitting fortnight. We could get that done on the first sitting day in the next sitting fortnight if Labor was serious about this. But the second issue, of course, is migration, and that will be an issue, a sticky issue, I think, at this Jobs Summit. We want to make sure that it's not just a talk fest, and it's not just a union-sponsored shopping list, that it's actually going to have concrete outcomes and recommendations that will improve the jobs market.
Well, Albanese does seem open to allowing pensioners to work more before their payments are penalised. Is that your read of it? Has he reached out to the opposition? Has he made any steps towards that?
I've seen actually no sign of him reaching out to the opposition. We know that there are around 2.5 million people in Australia that are on the age pension right now. Around 80,000 of them, or less than 3%, are currently working. This is an incredible opportunity and we could flick the switch tomorrow. In fact, I was speaking about this issue on Sky just last week, last Friday, with Tom Connell, and when I got back to the office, the first thing that happened was a phone call from a pensioner who said, that was fantastic, I didn't know about that, I would love to work if I possibly can. So there's enormous demand, pent-up demand out there from pensioners. There's enormous pent-up demand from employers. I've been out there speaking to small businesses just in the last couple of weeks, and this is one of the big issues for them, finding the right employees and then the cost of inputs as well, the cost of living. And again, that's something that we haven't heard a word about from Anthony Albanese, whereas the most important issue for Australians right now.
Well, the part of the problem is this visa backlog. Migration is part of the solution too, but the visa backlog is appalling. Some people are waiting months, if not up to 12 months. Was this in part because your cuts to departments and the public service?
No, I reject that entirely. In fact,
what's the hold-up? Because this hold-up isn't unique for this government.
And it's an opportunity now for the government to address the hold-up that is within the department. But that's up to a Labor government right now.
Well,
now, they've been in power for 3 months.
Is, though,
they've been in power.
Jane Hume, because this backlog.
Do you think they're going to discover that, though, Laura, at this Jobs Summit? But do you think that this is what the Jobs Summit is going to uncover? I don't think so. This is the responsibility of the Labor government right now, and that's not what the Jobs Summit is all about. What we want to make sure is that the Jobs Summit isn't simply a talk fest, isn't simply a union-sponsored shopping list, that it's actually going to address the problems that are facing Australians. And the real problem facing Australians, of course, is the cost of living.
Everyone's saying at the moment, all sides saying migration is part of the problem. The unions say that, you say that, Labor says that, but no one can really put a figure on it. Isn't that what the Jobs Summit is about, trying to find out what that magic number is?
Well, certainly migration is part of the solution. In fact, immigration, skilled migration, was an important part of Australia's growth under the Coalition government. It was obviously, held up during COVID-19 when, everything changed. And more importantly, it's going to be an important part of our economic growth into the future. But getting the numbers right, getting the skills right are so important. What it shouldn't be, though, is an opportunity, as we heard from the ACTU, to simply sign up skilled migrants into the union movement before they've even hit our shores. This is not an opportunity to expand the union movement. This is there to fill those jobs that we need in Australia to make sure that our economy keeps ticking along.
Okay, let's talk about this flagged inquiry into Morrison's secret ministries. What do you support exactly? An inquiry that could call upon Scott Morrison to give evidence?
Well, let's first take a step back and understand what it is that the Solicitor General has said, which is that the appointment to those ministries was not illegal, it wasn't invalid, it wasn't even unconstitutional, but it was unconventional. What we support is an inquiry that would strengthen those conventions and strengthen those processes to ensure that there is transparency to allow our institutions to function in the future. But it doesn't need to be a witch hunt. It doesn't need to be a, who knew what and when. This is not actually addressing an important issue for Australians. The most important issue for Australians right now is the cost of living, their hip pocket, what they're paying at the Bowser, what they're paying at the grocery counter, their mortgage repayments. This is we don't want to turn this into a political opportunity. If it strengthens processes, if it improves transparency, if it improves accountability and enhances responsible government, that's fantastic. But if it's a political circus, well, that does nobody any good.
Well, how undermining has it been to Scott Morrison? We had Christine Holgate on the program earlier this week. He was calling for an independent inquiry into her while he was the secret finance minister, and she's pointed out, which is very fair, that how independent was it if he was secretly had some power in that portfolio? Does she at least deserve an apology?
Well, in fact, she was the CEO of a government business enterprise where the primary shareholder, where the shareholder is the government. And, I think that the things that happened to Christine Holgate, we should probably put into the past. I don't know whether an inquiry is going to make any difference whatsoever. I think what's most important in these circumstances, Laura, is that we look at this with very clear eyes. There's an awful lot of opportunity to sort of froth at the mouth. It can be quite salacious in its approach. That's not going to help anybody. It's not going to improve transparency or accountability or improve convention or legislation. What we need to make sure, though, is that any inquiry that the government undertakes and is supported by the opposition strengthens our democracy and doesn't undermine it.
One last thing on the Jobs Summit, which could be helpful, is women. The women issue, getting more women into work. That could solve a huge productivity problem, couldn't it? How would the opposition propose to get more women into work?
Well, absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I'm most proud of when we were in government was that we had a record number of women in jobs, that when we were recovering from COVID, as part of the economic recovery, more women became employed than men in that recovery. I think that was a really important step forward. Now, is there more that we can do? Can we improve that participation rate further? Absolutely. Can we close the gender pay gap? As a matter of priority, we absolutely should. And if that's something that the Jobs Summit wants to discuss, I think that's terrific. I haven't actually heard that the women would be on the agenda of the Jobs Summit. If it is, that's something that I think that we would support.